Hi everyone, welcome to the 102 Hours YouTube channel. Tonight we're going to talk about the story of the Night Stalker, the shadow that terrorized California. You can almost feel the heavy Los Angeles heat pressing against your skin as twilight bleeds into night. The distant hum of freeway traffic blends with chirping crickets, and the amber glow of street lamps casts long, wavering shadows across cracked sidewalks. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is on your end. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The case we're diving into is the Night Stalker, which concerns Richard Ramirez in a second-person narrative. Are you ready? Let's begin. You step off a stucco porch and onto a narrow sidewalk beneath a flickering orange lamp. In the early 1980s, Los Angeles was still reeling from the Manson family murders, a grim testament to how evil could infiltrate suburban safety. Tonight, that evil has a fresh face, the Night Stalker. Each footstep echoes against garage doors and neatly trimmed hedges, but your mind fills the silence with unspoken warnings. A slight breeze rustles palm fronds overhead, carrying the faint scent of desert sage from yards beyond. Ahead, a single-story bungalow sits half in shadow, its front window cracked open, an invitation, or a trap. You catch your reflection in the glass, wide-eyed, breathing shallow. Investigators still question whether Ramirez's early attacks were opportunistic explorations or part of a darker ritual. As you draw closer, you recall that in 1978 the FBI established the Behavioral Science Unit to study violent offenders' patterns, a groundbreaking shift from pure forensics to psychological profiling. By 1984, that unit was already consulting on high-profile cases, analyzing crime scene signatures to predict a killer's next move. You're unwittingly part of that living experiment, each sight and sound feeding theories in Quantico offices. You inhale, tasting the tension in the air, and maybe, faintly, something metallic that teases at memories of past violence. It lies just beyond conscious reach, enough to unnerve you. The bungalow's porch light flickers, revealing a welcome mat inscribed "Home Sweet Home," its irony piercing your unease. In one home invasion, Ramirez famously wore a satanic pentagram drawn on his palm and scrawled inverted crosses in victims' blood. Some fringe accounts claim he whispered verses from The Black Cat by Edgar Allan Poe while inside, though no credible evidence ties him to Poe fandom. You shrug off that story as you pace the porch, feeling the rough wood beneath your fingertips. Behind you, a siren wails low, then drifts away. You stand rigid, aware that in 1983 LA County's homicide rate hovered around 10 per 100,000 residents, the highest in decades. Crime labs still depended on fingerprint and shoe print analysis, while DNA profiling was only theoretical. That left killers like Ramirez slipping through investigative gaps you can almost taste on the night air. You notice a child swaying gently in the yard, its chain links rattling like a slow heartbeat. Moments earlier, a neighbor had recounted hearing muffled calls for help, but by the time patrol cars arrived, the attacker had vanished. The swing's motion reminds you that ordinary life teeters on a knife's edge here. Through a cracked window, you glimpse a ceiling fan's blade slicing the stale air. In one attack, Ramirez pressed a gun to the fan housing while threatening his victims, an act both absurd and terrifying. You imagine that wind chilling your neck, and you swallow hard. A faint click, like a door latch, snaps you back. Your skin prickles. The bungalow's front door stands slightly ajar, as though someone inside forgot to lock it. You weigh retreat against curiosity, but the investigation in your head demands you press on. You step inside, toes grazing a cool tile floor. The scent of jasmine sachets drifts from a hallway table, clashing with the faint coppery hint you can't quite place. In that moment, you remember that rosewater colognes were popular among LA's elite in the 80s, one more ordinary detail in an unfolding nightmare. At the far end of the hallway, a lamp flickers. The room beyond holds a toppled chair and a shattered picture frame, remnants of a struggle. You can almost hear the victim's stifled gasp, though no recording captured it. It lives now only in your mind. Beneath the lamp, you spot a crude pentagram drawn in what looks eerily like blood. You lean closer, heart pounding, tracing the jagged lines with your eyes. That symbol, as much as any physical evidence, would become Ramirez's signature, etched into criminal profiling textbooks for decades. A silence so complete it roars engulfs you. You realize your pulse is the only sound. Behind you, the front door thunks shut. You whirl around, breath catching, but the hallway beyond is empty, save for your own reflection in a darkened window. You exhale, shoulders trembling. In that hush, you remember that LA's Skid Row shelters sheltered thousands, many unseen by suburban families. Some fringe theorists argued Ramirez hunted both for thrill and to feed on the city's overlooked margins, though motivations remain debated. You force your feet forward, heading back toward the porch. Outside, the night air feels thinner. You glance down the sidewalk, half expecting to see a masked figure materialize. Instead, the street lamp flickers once more, and all you see are elongated shadows reaching for you. In that moment, you understand how fear became a weapon in Ramirez's hands, the uncertainty of what lurks in darkness, the question of safety behind locked doors. You smooth your shirt sleeve, steady your breathing, and step off the porch onto the concrete. Under the indifferent California sky, the Night Stalker's shadow stretches long and cold. You walk away, every nerve alight, carrying the weight of what you've witnessed. The night seems to cling to you, whispering promises of things unseen. And as you round the corner, the quiet hum of the city resonates, but you know it's only the calm before the storm. You step onto a quiet cul-de-sac in Monterey Park as dusk bleeds into night, the sidewalk still warm from a hot California day. A single lamp flickers at the end of the block, casting half-formed shadows that dance across neatly trimmed hedges. You can almost taste the chlorine from a neighbor's pool and feel the faint vibration of a distant metro train rumbling beneath city streets. The air carries a faint sweetness, like someone left a hyacinth-scented air freshener on, as if to pretend nothing sinister could ever seep in here. You pause before a modest ranch-style home, its sliding glass door slightly ajar. It's 1984, and home invasions are becoming a troubling trend. Los Angeles County saw a nearly 15% rise in residential burglaries between 1980 and 1984, pushing communities on edge with every unlocked latch and unlatched window. A lone car idles in the driveway, headlights off, as if waiting for a signal to pounce. You brush your fingertips across the cool metal of the doorknob and taste a catch of tension at the back of your throat. Tonight, you learn how simple doors turned into gateways of terror. Inside, the living room tells a story of interrupted normalcy, a half-rolled newspaper on the coffee table, a spilled glass of iced tea glinting in lamplight, and a family photo stretched across the mantel. You inhale sharply, catching a whiff of stale smoke, someone's forgotten cigarette butt, or perhaps a careless ember from a worn ashtray. Investigators still question whether Ramirez walked in expecting no resistance or planned each move as part of a rehearsed performance. You slip your phone from your pocket, those cell phones won't exist for another half-decade, and imagine how differently you'd react with an emergency button at your thumb. Instead, you rely on a landline phone, its cord coiled like a snake ready to strike. You follow faint scuff marks on the carpet, remnants of a hurried flight across the room. You can almost hear the victim's heart pounding seconds before the first shot echoed, a single .22 caliber bullet that shattered glass and hope in equal measure. A mainstream forensic fact alerts you: fingerprint classification systems, established in the early 1900s, were still the cornerstone of linking criminals to scenes, and Ramirez's early prints went unnoticed under dim porch lights and lax record-keeping. You crouch beside a sofa leg and trace a smudged shoe print, a size 9 tennis shoe with a distinct zigzag sole. It reminds you that even the most routine training could miss a detail when adrenaline and fear cloud the mind. In one bizarre rumor, locals whispered that Ramirez carried a small music box, winding it in the shadows before breaking in, an eerie lullaby to soften his victims' defenses. No police report ever mentioned a wind-up tune, but that whisper lodged in your imagination like a splinter. You shake your head and press on, because in this world the truth blurs with folklore until you sift through every crumb of evidence. You tiptoe into the kitchen, where a single cabinet door hangs open. A stray spoon lies on the linoleum floor, its handle bent. You bend to examine a smear of blood, tiny droplets like dew caught in the cold morning grass, though it's impossible to know whose blood without lab tests that won't arrive for days. Outside, a streetlight hums, its electric buzz an unwelcome reminder that help could be miles away. Your breathing steadies as you recall that in many home invasion cases of the era, perpetrators were amateurs, once-off opportunists seeking valuables. But the Night Stalker was different. His attacks escalated from theft to terror, leaving behind not just stolen trinkets but broken psyches. Investigators still question whether Ramirez's early crimes were a test run for darker deeds or a sudden descent into calculated malice. You move toward a narrow hallway where a bedroom door stands ajar. Inside, a dresser drawer is open, its contents spilling: embroidered handkerchief, a turquoise brooch, and a wedding photo whose glass is cracked like frozen lightning. You imagine the couple's intimate morning routines, unaware that someone would violate their sanctuary tonight. A single shoe lies on the floor, discarded like evidence of panic. A gentle breeze drifts through a broken window, carrying the faint scent of magnolia blossoms from a neighbor's tree. You catch a whiff of something metallic, and your pulse quickens. In the 80s, it was standard to dust for prints the next morning, often overlooking tiny swabs of DNA, still years away from crime labs. The idea that microscopic science could one day solve cases like this seems impossible here, in this living tableau of chaos. Suddenly, the front door creaks. You freeze, every muscle taut. A distant police scanner crackles to life in your mind, but real responders will be on their way only after the worst has happened. You sidestep into the kitchen, heart hammering, and peek through a cracked window. In the driveway, an unremarkable sedan idles, its driver's face obscured by darkness. You grip the windowsill, knuckles white, as the engine purrs like a predator stalking wounded prey. You remember that in 1977, Britain's Yorkshire Ripper case prompted global shifts in how detectives linked serial offenses, spurring the creation of more coordinated task forces. Here, in Monterey Park, those lessons haven't fully taken root. You wonder if a similar shadowy web of information sharing could have stopped Ramirez before he learned to wield fear so expertly. A flash of lightning, bright porch light snaps you back. The sedan's headlight sweeps past, illuminating a figure in a ski mask stepping onto the lawn. You hold your breath, watching as he moves with slithering grace, gleaming boot on cracked concrete. He pauses, as if sensing your presence. You feel a brush of cold air on your neck, his shadow stretching across the lawn like a dark promise. Then he turns and disappears into the night, leaving only the echo of his boots in your ears. You exhale, shoulders trembling, and step away from the window. The bungalow stands quiet again, blood and ritual scrawls hidden beneath a veneer of suburban calm. You glance back once more, knowing that this was only the beginning, an opening move in a deadly game that would soon expand across counties. You step outside into the cool night, each breath ragged. The distant skyline glimmers with promise, but here, under the hush of Monterey Park streets, normal life has fractured. You walk back toward the cul-de-sac entrance, heart still racing, and realize that from this night on, no unlocked door in your mind will ever feel safe again. You slip back onto the boulevard where the Night Stalker's true calling cards first appeared, a jagged pentagram scrawled in crimson across a living room wall. The coarse lines pulse like fresh wounds in the lamplight, daring you to look closer. In the early 1980s, the so-called satanic panic gripped America, inflaming fears of occult ritual in everything from daycare centers to suburban basements. Yet here, under your gaze, the symbols feel brutally authentic, each triangle and stroke carved with a merciless intent. You crouch beside the ritualistic scrawl, inhaling the coppery tang of dried blood. The FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP, established in 1983 to track patterns in serial homicides, now films this room in local databases. That nationwide effort was one of the first mainstream attempts to map killers' signatures, linking crimes not by geography but by the unique breadcrumbs left behind. You become an unwitting participant in that mapping, each twisted mark feeding into a profile stitched together by distant analysts. A faint breeze rattles the window panes. You trace your fingertip just above the floor, where a smaller inverted cross is daubed inside a circle. Some fringe rumors whispered that Ramirez mixed his own sacramental ink, a bizarre concoction of red wine and lamp oil, to give his symbols an otherworldly sheen. Though no laboratory found evidence of any mystical potion, local gossip gave his crimes an almost mythic aura, as if a dark priest had blessed each break-in. You shake your head, trying to separate folklore from fact, but the line here has already blurred. You stand and survey the rest of the room, a child's mobile tangled in a corner, toys pushed aside as if recoiling from the altar of terror. A toppled lamp casts an intermittent glow, spotlighting a blood-spattered Bible left open to Psalm 23, a detail both chilling and confounding. Investigators still question whether Ramirez chose that passage to mock salvation or simply grabbed the nearest book in panic, leaving it behind like a dropped mask. Your foot nudges a scrap of torn wallpaper, its design a faded floral motif. Scrawled across it in shaky script, 666. The number repeats beneath a garish inverted heart drawn in what appears to be a lipstick smear. You wonder if the killer paused here, thumb to lips, painting vows in the dark. In 1984, the average forensic lab processed evidence in weeks. Today, you could have instant digital scans. Back then, that lipstick lipogram would sit in an evidence locker, untouched until analysts pieced together his signature months later. You step toward the threshold leading to the kitchen, passing a dented rotary phone off the hook. On the cradle, a single playing card, an ace of spades, lies face down. Urban legend held that Ramirez left this card at some scenes as a satanic calling card, though case files contain no mention of it. It lives only in rumor mill chatter and speculative tabloids, giving the Night Stalker an almost supernatural swagger. You turn it over, blank on the back, ordinary cardstock. No secret message. In one bizarre fringe account, residents believed he whispered cryptic phrases from Aleister Crowley's writings, his voice echoing with unnatural resonance before each attack. No police transcript ever recorded such mutterings, yet the tale lingers, a testament to how fear morphs fact. You feel a shiver as you recall Crowley's nickname, the wickedest man in the world, and wonder if Ramirez borrowed more than his brutality from those dark pages. Your flashlight beam crosses to the far wall, where a dagger-shaped gouge slices through plaster. You crouch to study its curve, following the groove with your gaze. Knife wounds were rare in Ramirez's early crimes, he favored firearms, but this deep score suggests a ceremonial offering, a sacrifice to some internal demon. Mainstream historians note that most serial offenders of that period embraced practical over theatrical methods, yet Ramirez's sporadic flair for ritual defied simple classification. You stand and rub your palms together, the hairs on your forearms standing at attention. The room feels alive, as if the symbols themselves pulse with malevolence. You step into the adjacent hallway and pause beneath a cracked ceiling lamp. The flicker casts the pentagram's shadow onto the floor, elongating its points like claws. You wonder if the killer intended that, placing his altar beneath imperfect light to warp the shape and message. Investigators still question whether the geometry held hidden codes, messages to an unseen collaborator, or was simply the result of haste under adrenaline. Beyond the hallway lies a bedroom where more evidence awaits. You push open the door and discover a child's bed strewn with toys, one stuffed bear stained red on its paw. You pick it up gingerly. The stuffing feels matted, the fur rough where someone yanked it open to extract fluff, perhaps to mix pigments or craft another crude symbol elsewhere. No forensic report confirms such fabric-based artistry, but the bear's ragged seams speak to a killer who toyed with innocence before discarding it. The paneled closet door is ajar. Inside, you find scrawled words, "I am the shadow," etched across hanging coats with a sharp object. The letters are uneven, as if sketched in flickering candlelight. Some detectives argued Ramirez used temporary light sources to confuse his victims' memories, making later testimonies less reliable. You press your forehead to the doorframe, trying to sense the pace of his writing, the rhythm of his breathing in that compact space. It's silent except for the creak of floorboards beneath your feet. You shuffle back, crossing the threshold onto the carpet where small flecks of plaster cling like white dust motes. You remember reading that LA County's crime labs in 1985 handled over 200,000 evidence items a year, straining resources and often delaying cross-case comparisons. Your chest tightens imagining how this room's signatures might sit idle in a backlog, waiting for someone to connect the dots. You exit the bedroom and linger in the foyer, noticing a black candle stub on the console table. Its melted wax has dripped in asymmetrical arcs, forming a cratered pool that hardens at the base. Some fringe theorists speculated Ramirez carried such candles on his person, lighting them in victims' homes to heighten terror. Detectives found no candle debris on his clothing when he was arrested, but that thin absence felt almost like a clue itself, an unanswered question in the catalog of horrors. You take a slow breath and feel the cold edge of the front door beneath your knuckles as you push outside. The symbols you've just witnessed cling to your mind like fresh ink. Under the street lamp, you turn the corner and pause, glancing back at the house. The pentagram on the wall glares at you from this distance, its points sharp against the night. You wonder how many more doors will bear such messages before Ramirez's spree ends. As you walk away, a distant church bell tolls midnight, its sonorous tone a counterpoint to the darkness you carry. You press your palm to your heart and feel the hollow of fear echoing between your ribs. Somewhere in the city, another set of scrawls awaits discovery, another altar, another gauntlet thrown at the feet of innocence. You trudge forward, lantern-eyed and unnerved, into a world where ritual and randomness collide under one killer's shadow. You slip behind the wheel of a run-down sedan, the engine idling with a soft growl as you wander the night's arteries. In the spring of 1985, Los Angeles County recorded over 350 homicides, the highest tally in the city's history, so each new body count felt like another dent in the city's armor. You flick on the dome light to examine a smudged map, red circles marking each attack, lines scrawled hastily between them. Investigators still question whether the killer mapped his route in advance or simply chased opportunity beneath the pale moon. Your headlights slice through the gloom as you steer northward into the San Fernando Valley, then back south toward Long Beach. Each neighborhood pulses with its own cadence, quiet cul-de-sac studded with tennis court lights, bustling strips where neon buzz competes with passing sirens. You park outside a stucco duplex where the last break-in left shattered glass twinkling on a tile floor. Inside, you'd nearly missed a single, smeared shoe print, size 9, zigzag sole, until you crouched under the porch light and spotted its ghostly outline. Mainstream investigators used ballistic fingerprint matching extensively in the early 80s, but shoe impressions were a burgeoning science that would soon become a staple of crime labs. As you cruise past shuttered storefronts, you recall that by 1984 the FBI's Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, VICAP, was already logging unexplained homicides nationwide, seeking patterns in chaos. Tonight, you're living that pattern, tracing each broken latch and toppled lamp back to a man who thrived on scattered breadcrumbs. Some fringe followers whispered that Ramirez carried a cassette player and left hidden audio messages at scenes, an eerie lullaby for the next unwitting visitor. No evidence ever substantiated the tapes, but rumor stitched itself into the city's dark tapestry. At each location, you note the same signature, a smeared pentagram etched by flashlight's edge, a Bible left open to Psalm 23, doors left ajar as if beckoning you inside. The consistency strikes a chord deep in your senses, binding these disparate streets into a single narrative of fear. Investigators still question whether they overlooked quieter crimes that fit the pattern, scenes too small or too remote to register at first glance, yet stamped with the same chilling flourish. You turn onto a winding avenue lined with eucalyptus trees that claw at the sky in skeletal silhouette. Your tires crunch on gravel as you approach a modest ranch home where local patrol cars still park, windows fogged from stakeout heat. A caution tape barrier flaps in the breeze, the only badge of tragedy. You step out, inhaling the night air heavy with eucalyptus and exhaust. The wind carries a faint, metallic tang, a reminder that the red droplets you've seen are never far behind. Inside that house, you discovered a child's mobile twisted into a grotesque spiral, dangling like a dark hieroglyph. Some whispered he snatched toys to craft makeshift effigies, a symbol of innocence violated beyond repair. No forensic report confirmed such tchotchke theatrics, but the tale took on a life of its own in diners and barbershops alike. You sink into the driver's seat again, tracing the route on your map while radio static hums a late-night talk show debating vigilante patrols. By mid-1985, more than a dozen neighborhoods formed armed militias, driven by fear and frustration as patrol units lagged behind Ramirez's nocturnal spree. Your reflection stares back from the rearview mirror, eyes rimmed with fatigue and resolve. Next up is a split level in Downey where the slain victim's screams once echoed through a baby monitor, an unsettling broadcast no one could trace until it was too late. Reports noted a stripped coaxial cable near the nursery, as if someone detached the line to silence the victim's pleas. Mainstream crime analysts would later cite such small details as groundbreaking leads. At the time, they were mere curiosities filed under miscellaneous. You drive on, the car's headlights illuminating new patches of asphalt, each a fresh canvas for terror. An interstate exit sign flickers overhead, Signal Hill, 2 miles. You imagine following that sign and finding another horror tableau, another jigsaw piece slotting into the Night Stalker's mosaic. Investigators still question whether unreported assaults in rural areas might belong to the same killer, hidden in closed-door settlements beyond the city's edge. Your map's red circles bleed together near Whittier, a cluster so dense it resembles a spreading stain. You park near a quiet cul-de-sac, boots crunching on gravel as you approach a window smeared with muddy fingerprints. You press your palm against the glass, feeling the ridge of dried dirt. Each fingerprint erased was a memory lost, an identity scrubbed clean, until someone, somewhere, connected the dots. You slip back into the sedan, pulse thrumming, and drive toward the distant glow of the skyline. In the rearview mirror, you glimpse not your own reflection but the shadow of a man who wandered these streets at will. You realize the true pattern isn't on paper at all, it's in the collective heartbeat of every suburban heartache, in the hush that fell after each midnight knock. You pressed the accelerator, leaving spinning tires and fractured sanctuaries behind. The road ahead yawns wide, promise and peril entwined under the indifferent Californian sky. The hunt to connect each chilling incident continues, and you're both chronicler and witness in a saga that refuses to make sense. You ease onto the exit ramp from the 605 freeway and roll into the San Gabriel Valley just as dusk deepens into inky blue. Streetlights flicker on one by one, revealing tidy rows of ranch-style homes fenced in by low hedges. You notice the same pattern everywhere, hastily nailed plywood over window frames, doors reinforced with extra locks, and neighbor-to-neighbor whispers carried on clipped voices. By 1985, Southern California's residential burglary rate had climbed more than 20% over the previous 5 years, making every creak in the night a potential harbinger of violence. As you cruise past dimly lit driveways, you spot a cluster of townsfolk gathering at a corner 7-Eleven, their silhouettes half-lit by neon slashes of red and green. They're exchanging rumors about the Night Stalker. Some swear they saw a black-clad figure slip through a side gate, others claim they heard a woman's scream echo from across the street. You inch closer, rolling down your window to catch fragments of their hushed conversation. Investigators still question whether these grassroots neighborhood watches helped slow Ramirez's spree or merely fueled hysteria that clouded serious leads. At one cul-de-sac, you slow to a crawl, taking in the barricaded lawns where families have stacked trash cans and lawn chairs against windows like makeshift barricades. A mother's voice drifts through an open car window, "He's not even a monster, he's a ghost." You never see him, but you feel him. Beneath her breath, she adds that she taped garlic cloves to her front door, convinced the killer feared holy protection, a fringe superstition with no basis in evidence but one that spread faster than any official warning. You cut the engine and step out, boots crunching on gravel. The smell of damp earth mingles with faint cigarette smoke from a neighbor's porch. A man in a plaid shirt nods at you solemnly. You hear about 212 West Valencia. They boarded up the whole house this afternoon, he says, eyes darting skyward as if the shadows themselves might listen. You nod, absorbing the hypervigilance radiating from every body language cue. Despite the fear, there's a strange camaraderie here, strangers united by terror, each glance and gesture an unspoken pact to watch over one another. You wander onto a residential street where Christmas lights still dangle from gutters, their pastel bulbs blinking empty cheer into the darkness. The contrast jars you, holiday decor abandoned mid-season, a leftover facade of normalcy mocking the panic below. You remember that in 1978, the Manson family's Tate LaBianca murders had already taught Californians that evil could wear an everyday smile. Now, a year after Ramirez's first strike, the valley's psyche felt split between suburban bliss and subterranean dread. A car door slams, and you jump, glancing toward a row of neatly trimmed hedges. Through the leaves, you glimpse a single candle flickering in a front window, not a decorative votive, but a real flame held by a trembling hand. The homeowner, an elderly woman, presses her face against the glass and stares out like it's the last light in the world. You offer a gentle smile, though your own heart is a hammer in your chest. Reluctantly, you continue walking. Up ahead, a spiral of spray-painted numbers circles the base of a palm tree, 13 in jagged strokes. Some locals joked it was Ramirez's tally of kills, an arrogant taunt carved in daylight. No police report ever documented such markings, but by the time you arrived, the graffiti had been scrubbed clean. Still, the memory lingers in conversation. As you pass a row of parked cars, you catch a glimpse of a small MP3-style radio, though portable cassette players wouldn't become ubiquitous until years later, taped beneath a woman's dashboard, antenna angled to catch police scanner chatter. Fringe watchers claimed they could predict Ramirez's next strike by monitoring frequencies, but no one ever confirmed any successful preemptive alert. You lean inside, heart thundering, and whisper to yourself a reminder that fear doesn't solve crimes. You pause at the entrance to a cul-de-sac labeled Rosewood Estates. The name feels cruelly ironic here, roses seen from a distance, but up close the bushes are trimmed to jagged spikes, their thorny branches threatening anyone who dares approach. A small group of teenagers, outsiders in minivans, peer nervously over the fence, scanning windows for movement. One of them twitches his head toward you, and you give a slow nod before stepping beneath the iron gate arch. Inside, every house has drawn its curtains tight. The glow from inside is faint, mere smudges against drawn blinds. A hush grips the street, broken only by the faint ticking of an unconscious clock somewhere behind a closed door. You can almost hear the collective heartbeat of families pressed against walls, willing them to hold firm. You recall that by mid-1985, police had received over 80 credible reports of possible Night Stalker sightings across Los Angeles County, and yet, fewer than a dozen led to substantial evidence. Each unverified tip piled onto crowded case files, stretching investigative resources thin. In one self-defense rumor, a homeowner claimed she rigged trip wires and motion sensors, technology prohibitively expensive at the time, but investigators found no traces of such gadgets in any crime scene. A sudden breeze rattles the hedges, and you catch the scent of jasmine again, this time mixed with the acrid tang of tear gas residue from a recent protest downtown. The collision of scents makes you dizzy for a moment. You steady yourself against a mailbox and draw a shaky breath. Sometimes the strongest weapon against fear is simply pausing, letting your mind rest in the stillness before moving on. You step out of Rosewood Estates and into the glow of a lone street lamp. Beneath its halo, you dust invisible lint from your jacket sleeve. In the distance, you hear a cruiser's siren fade, never close enough, never quite on time. You slide back into your car and grip the steering wheel, palms slick. As you pull away, you realize that the valley's panic has become a living entity, a whisper carried on every breeze, a glance cast at dark windows, a silent pact to guard against the unseen. In the rearview mirror, you see the glow of countless homes braced against the night. You wonder how many will hold their breath until Ramirez's shadow finally lifts, or if the next scream will shatter their fragile calm. You start the engine, conviction settling in your bones. The fear that grips neighborhoods is both weapon and warning, a testament to how deeply terror can root itself in ordinary lives. The game of cat and mouse continues under California's starless sky, and you drive on, determined to witness every act in this unfolding nightmare. You find yourself squeezed into a packed briefing room at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department headquarters, the stale coffee scent mingling with the tang of sweat and anticipation. A wall-to-wall montage of maps, aerial photographs, and crime scene stills stares at you like accusing eyes. It's June 1985, and for the first time, LAPD detectives, sheriff's deputies, and FBI agents have pooled resources into a multi-agency task force dubbed Operation Nightwatch. By that point, California was already piloting over 20 such joint task forces to tackle rising violent crime, a revolutionary shift from siloed precinct work to regional collaboration. Your palms press against the cool Formica table as you peer at the first composite sketch pinned to a corkboard, a narrow-jawed man with deep-set eyes and a crooked nose. You trace each charcoal stroke with your gaze, imagining how that profile might flicker beneath a ski mask. Investigators still question whether that early sketch truly captured the Night Stalker's face, or simply froze an eyewitness's panic-blurred imagination. A ragged note tacked beside the drawing catches your eye. He talks to us on CB, Channel 19. Beware the midnight static. According to fringe rumor, the killer hijacked local citizens' band frequencies to taunt dispatchers, weaving his voice into radio static like a phantom DJ. No recording ever surfaced to confirm the broadcasts, but the mere suggestion sent shivers through radio operators who prided themselves on clear channels. You watch as agents debate suspect profiles, their voices low and urgent. One veteran detective invokes the notion of an organized loner, someone methodical enough to evade capture yet reckless enough to leave ethereal signatures. He cites the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit, which by this time had profiled dozens of serial offenders, noting patterns in victim selection and break-in methodology. That pioneering unit, born in 1978, treated each crime scene like a mind map, charting psychological breadcrumbs as carefully as physical ones. You press a finger to your temple, closing your eyes against the projector's glare. You almost feel the cold of a broken window frame slicing into your palm as it did at the first Monterey Park crime scene. A forensic specialist passes you an acetate overlay showing blood spatter trajectories, an early form of crime scene reconstruction that was only just coming into its own in the mid-80s. Mainstream labs were only then experimenting with luminol to reveal hidden blood traces, and here you are on the cutting edge of that innovation. Your stomach knots as the task force leader assigns precincts and canvas areas. Each street gets logged, then logged again, in overlapping grids meant to trap the killer in a tightening net. But casualty to practical caution is momentum. The sprawling nature of Los Angeles County, with its 4,084 square miles, meant that coordinating patrols often felt like herding ghosts across freeways and foothills. In one corner of the room, a junior agent leans in to whisper about a cult connection theory, that Ramirez spent time in occult bookstores around Hollywood, perhaps even attended midnight rituals at abandoned mansions. Though no paper trail supported visits to such gatherings, the rumor entwined with reports of occult paraphernalia found at scenes, inverted crosses, pentagrams, and torn-out Bible pages. You can almost hear the late-night crowd at the old book den assigning credence to every whispered scheme. You rub your forearms as the lead detective calls for cross-referencing of suspects in federal databases. A name floats to the top, Richard Ramirez, flagged in Texas for petty theft and assault years earlier. His rap sheet included a probation violation for burglary, but back then, those entries rarely traveled beyond county lines. Forensic communication networks like VICAP and automated fingerprint identification systems, AFIS, were only starting to link suspects nationally, and California labs processed hundreds of thousands of prints a year, straining outdated card file systems. Your heart thumps when the room's tension coalesces around Ramirez's prior mugshots and prison intake photos. You study his gaunt cheekbones and the shadow of a cheek scar, wondering how many faces just like his vanished into Los Angeles crowds. Investigators still question whether they zeroed in on the right man so soon, or if other killers matched the same terrifying mo. You step back from the table and wander to the coffee pot, where the fumes claw at your nostrils. An FBI profiler lounges against a counter, showing a faded set of notes detailing ritualistic staging. He points out that the Night Stalker's shift from pure burglary to home invasion with violence mirrored the pattern of known sexual sadists profiled in the early 1980s. The profiler's words drift over you like a lecture you've half absorbed. Still, you sense a disconnect. The statistical likelihood of a killer who combined burglary, rape, and satanic posturing was vanishingly small, yet here they were chasing an anomaly. You cradle a paper cup as you return to the maps, noting the grid of blue push pins marking canvassed houses and red pins for confirmed attacks. The density grows around El Monte and Irwindale, morphing into a blood-red cluster. Every unconnected pin feels like an orphaned scream waiting to be acknowledged. A sergeant catches your eye and rumbles, "This killer's smart, but not infallible. He's slipped once, and we're here to make sure he can't do it again." His words rattle like a challenge, and you feel the sting of that promise in your chest. You slip out of the room into the humid corridor, trailing the narrow beam of your flashlight across peeling linoleum tiles. Outside, a squad car idles, its radio hissing intermittent updates. You climb into the passenger seat as deputies slide behind the wheel, maps unwinding across their laps. The plan, canvas blocks in alternating shifts, checking every open window, every unlocked door. As you roll through a silent neighborhood, the deputies point out recent locksmith reports, calls spiking in areas where the Night Stalker struck, each new deadbolt a testament to collective terror. You think of how simple innovations like double-keyed deadbolts had only just entered domestic markets, and how many families rushed to install them overnight. Your stomach twists when a deputy calls radio traffic, a possible sighting of a man matching Ramirez's composite sketch near Baldwin Park. The car screeches to a halt. Flashlights thrust onto a lone figure pushing a bicycle. Deputies leap out and demand identification. The man trembles but produces a driver's license with a different name. No sign of weapons, no intimidation, just a hiker who lost his way after sunset. You exhale, chest heaving, as deputies guide the man back to his home. The radio crackles with relief and recrimination, another false alarm, another precious minute lost chasing a shadow. Yet each misstep tightens everyone's resolve. You slide back into the front seat, the night pressing in through the open window. The deputies point their lights at darkened doorways, scanning for ski masks or silhouettes. Your heartbeat thunders in your ears as you realize the game is far from over. You press your palm against the dashboard and feel its hard lines under your fingers, the same dashboard that would soon carry you to a dark alley where the Night Stalker's luck ran out. But tonight, you ride these streets under a mesh of suspicion and strategy, part of a task force born from fear and necessity. In the flickering glow of the flashlight beams, you catch a glimpse of your own face in the rearview mirror, drawn and determined. You know that every locked door, every composite sketch, and every field interrogation brings you a step closer to ending the reign of terror. Your breath catches as the deputy radios in one final report, all clear for this shift. You nod, the corners of your mouth lifting in a dry, ironic grin. Operation Nightwatch has just begun, and the Shadow's days are numbered, even if the end remains uncertain. You crouch beneath a flickering porch light in a tidy Burbank cul-de-sac, the glare bouncing off your flashlight's beam and dancing across a muddy shoe print at your feet. In the mid-1980s, fingerprint analysis was already the gold standard for linking suspects to crime scenes. Over 60% of homicide investigations nationwide relied on latent prints for identification by 1985. Yet tonight, you're painfully aware that in Ramirez's early attacks, crucial impressions went unnoticed under dim bulbs and inexperienced eyes. Investigators still question whether those partial prints in Burbank could have nailed him weeks before he struck again. Your palm brushes against a cool drop of rain that's fallen onto the cracked concrete, a gentle reminder that even the smallest moisture can blur ridge detail. You inhale the scent of damp earth mixed with gasoline from a neighbor's lawnmower, an oddly domestic aroma in a tableau of terror. It nags at you. What if Ramirez returned here, saw his own prints, and laughed at the baffled detectives? You lean forward, shining your light on a door frame where a slender fingertip smear arcs down the wood grain. Decades before AFIS, automated fingerprint identification systems became widespread, analysts compared prints by eye, matching minutiae manually on metal cards. That painstaking work could take days or weeks, and backlogs often meant that prints sat in file drawers until priority cases bumped them to the top. In Ramirez's spree, speed was his ally and science his silent adversary. A soft breeze stirs the hedges behind you, carrying a whisper of night-blooming jasmine. You remember a fringe claim that Ramirez dipped his gloves in baby powder before breaking in, ensuring that any accidental prints left on porcelain sinks would show up like ghosts under black light. No lab report ever confirmed such tactics, but the rumor flickers in your imagination like a candle flame. You shake your head, wondering how much of this case sleaze is fact and how much is folklore. A distant echo of a police radio crackles in your mind, reminding you that by 1987 California crime labs had reduced fingerprint turnaround to under 48 hours on average. But in 1984, those labs processed tens of thousands of prints each month, often trimming lower priority cases to keep homicide evidence flowing. You flick on a small handheld device that sprays luminol over a dark patch on the threshold. The chemical bloom glows like ethereal mist, revealing a palm print smeared across concrete, proof that this porch had been Ramirez's stage. Modern viewers see CSI magic on TV, you know that back then, luminol was experimental, reserved for the most confounding scenes. As you stand, a distant car alarm blares, an uncomplicated alarm compared to the complex alarms your heart now sounds. You steady yourself against the door frame, eyes scanning the wall where a single bullet hole pockmarks the stucco. Beside it, a small circular print shaped like half a fingerprint draws your focus. Investigators still question whether that sliver of pattern belonged to Ramirez or to a homeowner who fumbled for a second-floor window. That uncertainty cost precious time. You slip off a latex glove and bend to examine the ground, a pattern of interrupted scuffs, like footprints skipping over puddles. Shoe print analysis was emerging then as a forensic specialty, but slug shoe impressions often went overlooked in favor of the more glamorous fingerprint cases. You trace a zigzag tread, size 9, that matches other scenes. Shoe print databanks were only in pilot form, and comparisons required carting casts around in padded evidence boxes. Every day that evidence sat idle was another night Ramirez roamed free. You stand and survey the tidy front yard, a swing set sways in a random gust, chained links rattling like breathless whispers. A neighbor's television flickers through the window, the glow painting the hedge in pale blue. No alarm here, just another family caught unawares. You imagine the perpetrator stepping across the grass, exhaling in triumph as forensic gaps widened like yawning chasms. Your pulse slows for a moment, a brief breather in the surge of adrenaline. The night air feels heavy, and you close your eyes to savor the stillness, then flip your light back on, because here's safe is just another illusion. You kneel by a flower bed where tiny glass beads from a broken jar glimmer like scattered pearls. You recall that Ramirez once supposedly carried a vial of perfumed oil, an urban legend claiming he anointed his knife handle to mask the scent of ammonia from bleach. No evidence backed that claim, yet it fastened itself to the lore of his hunt, weaving ritual into the mundane. You brush away soil to find a latent print on a ceramic pot, precious new data in the war against darkness. As you dust gently with carbon black powder, the swirl of print ridges emerges. You hold your breath, imagining the thousands of prints the lab will have to sort tomorrow. In those days, analysts used magnifying glasses and scribbled notes. Today a computer would flag a match in seconds. But tonight, the clock is your enemy. Something shifts behind you, a soft click as a gate swings open. Your heart stutters. You whirl, training your light on the path, but see only your own shadow stretched over gravel. The breeze carries a distant laugh, or maybe it's just your mind playing tricks. You steady your breathing and step back, eyes locked on the hidden fingerprint. It pulses in the beam, a silent testament to a killer's presence. You think of the Federal Bureau's push in 1984 to standardize evidence protocols, mandating that all death-related crime scenes be processed for prints within 24 hours. But many departments lacked funding or training, and protocols were unevenly adopted. Ramirez exploited every inconsistency. You rise and straighten, brushing gravel from your knees. The porch light blinks once more before fading, plunging you into a pool of darkness. You switch off your flashlight, trusting your eyes to adjust. Stars swirl overhead, indifferent witnesses to human terror. You hear the soft hum of a distant helicopter, an LAPD chopper scanning rooftops for heat signatures, a technology decades ahead of the times. A soft exhale escapes you. The evidence you've uncovered tonight, a revealed palm print, a smudged threshold print, a latent pattern on ceramic, will all mean little if no one connects them fast enough. Investigators still question whether earlier linkage of these prints might have prevented Ramirez's next attack in Arcadia 2 nights later. You step off the porch and back onto the sidewalk, every nerve alive. The rain has stopped, leaving the air crisp and electric. You pocket your tools and look back once more. The house is silent, the prints invisible to the untrained eye. But for you, they gleam in the mind's eye, haunting like the faint echo of a whispered confession. You walk away, footsteps soft on concrete, carrying a battered evidence bag in one hand and a heart heavy with urgency in the other. Behind you, the porch light sputters out, leaving darkness to reclaim its territory. You know that dawn will bring a flurry of lab work and frantic calls, but until then, the night holds its deadly secrets close, and only the living can wrestle them into the light. You slip through the threshold of a modest bungalow in East Los Angeles, the door clicking softly behind you. The low hum of a refrigerator mingles with the faint scent of lemon-scented cleaner still lingering in the hallway. A framed photograph on the entry table catches your eye, 2 young siblings in matching baseball caps, their smiles frozen in a sunny afternoon. You crouch beside it, tracing the glossy surface with your fingertip. In 1985, the Bureau of Justice Statistics estimated that roughly 15 out of every 100,000 Americans fell victim to home invasion assaults, making each story you uncover today a rare, shattered life that demands attention. You rise and jog your gaze across the living room, where a low coffee table holds an open sketchbook. Its pages display whimsical doodles, a cartoon cat chasing butterflies, drawn in the careful hand of a child. You recall that one of Ramirez's early victims was 8-year-old Emily Vicente, who loved to draw before bedtime. Investigators still question whether Ramirez knew she might be home alone that night or if her presence was cruel happenstance. You imagine Emily's hand, tiny and precise, tracing cats on paper, unaware that someone in a mask walked the same floorboards just hours later. Moving into the kitchen, you brush past a refrigerator adorned with magnets shaped like fruits, watermelon, pear, banana. One magnet lies face down on the vinyl floor, as if displaced in panic. You lean over to read the scrawl on a grocery list: milk, eggs, bread, stamps. The ordinariness of domestic life crashes into the horror you're tracking. A quirky rumor flutters in your mind. Some whispered that Ramirez plucked a single grape from a bowl and dropped it at crime scenes as a cryptic calling card. No police report ever mentioned fruit, yet the notion of a killer packaging humanity's simplest comforts into his fetish feels disturbingly poetic. A sharp intake of breath makes you spin around. A broken drawer beside the stove lies open, its contents, silverware, potholders, strewn across the tiled floor. You steady yourself against the counter, heartbeat echoing in your ears. The most startling part is the absence of blood or struggle marks, only overturned daily life. You gently pick up a spatula, its handle sticky with something you can't identify. Later tests might show nothing more than spilled syrup, but tonight, every sticky smear feels like proof of traumatic violation. You pause in the doorway to a small study, where a desk lamp illuminates a family photo of a retired teacher, Robert Hughes, whose gentle eyes convey decades of shared lessons. He taught history at a neighborhood junior high for more than 20 years, his students affectionately called him Mr. H. Tonight, that gentle guide became another victim. You rest a fingertip on the wooden desk, remembering that, historically, most serial offenders preyed on strangers in their homes precisely because isolation made their crimes easier to conceal. By the mid-1980s, criminologists recognized that victim routines, like teachers grading papers late, could inadvertently invite danger. You trace your light across the bookshelves, lined with well-worn paperbacks and dog-eared textbooks. A copy of The Count of Monte Cristo sits perched beside a family Bible. You gently nudge the novel, and it tilts, dislodging a photograph tucked behind, a sepia-toned snapshot of Mr. H, standing in front of a chalkboard full of equations, chalk in hand, lecture notes ready. In the corner, someone has scribbled September 1984 in ballpoint pen. You tuck that detail away, another breadcrumb for investigators who would soon compile timelines from the smallest artifacts. Stepping into the adjacent bedroom, you inhale a faint trace of lavender, perhaps from a pillow spray, perhaps from someone's last comfort ritual. The bed is neatly made, the duvet folded back halfway. You imagine the last moments before terror, a simple decision to straighten pillows, to smooth wrinkles, an innocent act snapped mid-air by intruder violence. On the nightstand, an analog clock reads 11:17 p.m., its hands frozen as if time itself refused to move beyond that instant. You lift an open book lying face down, a paperback titled Cold Case Files, irony etched in its cover art. You flip it gently and find a bookmark, a pressed hydrangea, flattened between pages. One fringe account maintained that Ramirez collected flowers from victims' yards to craft a twisted bouquet back at his lair. No forensic team ever found petals in his apartment, but the legend made its way into true crime forums, coloring public imagination. You inhale, mingling lavender and old paper scent, grateful this flower is only ink on paper. Your steps echo softly on the carpet as you move toward a dresser drawer cracked open. Inside, socks lie in tidy pairs, a wristwatch rests on silky lining, and beneath them, a small velvet box. You slide your finger beneath the lid and lift it, a pair of wedding bands catch the lamp's glow. You hold them delicately, feeling their cool metal weight. They belong to Jorge and Elena Santos, married just 6 months before fate unfolded here. You picture their laughter over morning coffee, the clink of dishes, the hopeful planning of anniversaries. That warmth now feels like a cruel memory. You stand and lean against the dresser, closing your eyes. The soft hum of distant traffic drifts through a cracked window. You grant yourself a breath, a brief respite from the ache that settles in your chest. This quiet pause is precious, outbreaks of intensity follow almost instantly. You absorb the stillness, body and mind bracing for what comes next. Opening your eyes, you notice a pair of children's shoes neatly lined by the door, pink sandals with faint glitter, scuffed from playground adventures. Investigators still question whether Ramirez deliberately targeted homes with children inside or if such scenes were tragic coincidences. You crouch to examine them, recalling that in one documented case he spared an infant asleep in a crib, a mercy that contrasted sharply with his brutality toward adults. That unanswered dichotomy fuels debates to this day. You rise and move to the living room once more, where the front window reveals the night beyond, a single street lamp haloed in mist. You imagine the next family arriving home, unaware their idyllic street harbors a threat. You take a slow step back, mindful of every creak in the floor. Before you leave, you lock eyes with your own reflection in the glass, layering your image over the haunted scene. You exhale and reach for your coat pocket, pulling out a small, dog-eared notebook. You scribble notes, victim ages, time of attack, personal items disturbed, every detail that might stitch these lives into a coherent pattern. You press the notebook against your chest, feeling the thrum of human stories fighting to be heard. As you step outside, the cool air meets your face, carrying the distant echo of sirens and hushed prayers whispered behind closed doors. You pause on the porch, gazing back at the house, once a sanctuary, now a testament to fragile security. Each victim's life flickered out here, leaving echoes in objects you still clutch in your mind. You descend the steps, boots dragging lightly on concrete. In the soft glow of the street lamp, you touch your chest, where the photograph, the wedding bands, and the sketchbook image mingle with your heartbeat. You realize that behind every crime scene's ritual and terror lie real lives uprooted in a single night. You step onto the sidewalk, the door clicking shut behind you. Your breath rises in gentle clouds in the cool California air. Ahead, another home awaits, another set of lives to uncover, another story cut short by the Night Stalker's shadow. You step into a dimly lit corner store, the bell above the door jingling like an alarm you can't silence. Under humming fluorescents, racks of tabloids burst with bold headlines, "Night Stalker strikes again." And terror in your neighborhood. The newsprint crackles under your fingertips as you pull out a copy, the lurid photographs of Richard Ramirez's gaunt face staring back at you. In the mid-1980s, local Los Angeles TV stations devoted nearly 30% of their evening newscast to crime stories, a dramatic rise from less than 15% a decade earlier, and newspapers seized on every gruesome detail to boost sales. You lean against the counter, inhaling the acrid perfume of fresh ink mixed with the metallic tang of fear that hangs in the air. Print journalists jostle with broadcast crews for the next exclusive, chasing every whisper of a new break-in. You notice a stack of Life magazine issues boasting a 10-page spread on America's most notorious killers, Ramirez's shadow filling each page. That glossy saturation of true crime reporting cemented public obsession and ratcheted up the collective heartbeat of Southern California. You tear out the front page article and tuck it into your jacket. Outside, the evening breeze carries echoes of frantic radio chatter. An AM DJ interrupts smooth jazz with breaking updates on the Night Stalker's latest suspected targets. Investigators still question whether the media's sensationalism helped spur vital tips, or simply drowned out credible leads beneath a tide of rumor and hysteria. A man in a trench coat sidles up to you, phone pressed to his ear, murmuring into a reporter's headset. He glances at your crumpled tabloid and offers a wink. "These headlines sell, right?" Fear sells. You swallow and nod, tasting shame alongside dread. The station's camera lights have turned ordinary streets into stages for terror, painting every shadow as a potential killer. You move on, weaving through parked cars toward a newsstand where morning editions are already on display. The racks groan under screaming titles, "Satanic Marks Revealed," "Ramirez Rituals Exposed," and "Who Will Be Next?" In 1983, the movie Scarface had glamorized violent underworld figures, and by 1985 the craze for real-life crime dramas was in full swing. True crime book sales jumped over 25% nationwide, feeding an insatiable appetite for darkness. You finger a glossy magazine boasting inside the killer's mind, its pages promising psychological insights but delivering sensational clichés. A sidebar brags that Ramirez once phoned the Los Angeles Times with cryptic clues, fringe gossip no official log ever recorded, yet repeated enough to sound plausible. You close your eyes briefly, imagining your own voice crackling through the static, taunting you with half-truths. A newsboy nearby hawks a special edition, uncovered, police cover-up. You lift it, scanning the text for sources. It claims that detectives buried evidence linking Ramirez to an occult bookstore in Hollywood, another fringe legend that thrived on the public's hunger for conspiracies. No court records mention such a bookstore connection, but the allegation fuels chatter in coffee shops and commuter trains alike. You notice a TV mounted above the register, tuned to a 24-hour cable news feed. The Chiron scrolls warnings, Stay indoors after dark and lock your doors. Night Stalker unstopped. You feel the screen's glow on your face, the spike of panic in your chest. A talking head speculates that the next attack could occur in your very block, name-dropping a North Hollywood zip code you know all too well. You slip outside with the newspaper under your arm and lean against the cool brick wall. The streetlights hum above you, but their glow feels half-hearted, as if the bulbs themselves are frightened. Cars roll slowly past, drivers craning their necks to glimpse you clutching Ramirez's mugshot. You wonder if your neighbors would call the police on someone who looks like a suspect simply because they appeared nervous, illustrating how media hype warps public perception. Stepping onto the sidewalk, you pass a bulletin board plastered with flyers, neighborhood watch meeting tonight, self-defense classes offered, and vigilante patrols forming. The adrenaline-fueled response felt empowering to many, but also led to armed civilians confronting innocent people. Investigators still question whether some vigilante actions unintentionally interfered with formal investigations or scattered critical evidence. You follow the trail of flyers to a community center where a pamphlet describes assembling nighttime barricades. You run your fingers over the glossy brochure, picturing residents nailing plywood boards over windows as if preparing for a hurricane, not an intruder on foot. Fear had turned ordinary homeowners into makeshift soldiers overnight, each hammer strike echoing collective desperation. A faint laugh drifts from inside the center, where volunteers hand out leaflets warning of occult symbols and devil worship. One volunteer insists the inverted cross in blood was a literal sign of a satanic cult, though experts later dismissed that theory as overreach. That fringe interpretation lent Ramirez's crimes an almost supernatural horror, feeding into national satanic panic that reached a fever pitch in the late 80s. You tear off a tear sheet and tuck it away, mindful of the growing pile of evidence you're carrying. The cacophony of warnings, theories, and half-truths feels like a second assault on the city's psyche. Yet amid the frenzy, a glimmer of hope emerges. Anonymous tips begin arriving at police hotlines, some dissuaded by headline terror now rallying to provide information. The media's double-edged sword could cut both ways. You pause beneath a flickering street lamp and flip through your collection, newspaper clippings, magazine spreads, pamphlets scrawled with jittery handwriting. You realize that while headlines stoked fear, they also kept the story alive in sleeping minds, neighbors who might otherwise forget to lock their doors, but now would dial 911 at the slightest creak. Your breath catches as a passing car's headlights carve away the darkness, revealing you standing alone under the halo of yellow light. The boulevard feels oddly silent, the earlier hum of human chatter replaced by the low drone of distant freeway traffic. You tuck the papers into your coat and press on, driven by the knowledge that separating truth from theatrics would be as vital as any forensic breakthrough. You reach the end of the block and glance back at the newsstand glow fading behind you. Tomorrow's headlines will brim with fresh speculation, new victim profiles, new pseudo-experts pontificating on Ramirez's psyche, new warnings that could save or shatter lives. You inhale the night air, tasting ink and anxiety in equal measure. You step into the hush of suburban streets, each porch light a tiny rebellion against the darkness. The media frenzy fades into a heartbeat's echo, but its reverberations will shape every mind you pass until the Night Stalker's reign ends. You walk on, the weight of sensational headlines slipping from your shoulders but never disappearing entirely. You slip through the low-hung garage door of another victim's home, the stale scent of oil and diesel mingling with the tang of something coppery, blood dried into the concrete floor. In that dim space, the first thing you notice is a crudely drawn inverted cross beside a lone workbench, its lines jagged and uneven. Your flashlight beam trembles as it scans over a pentagram etched into the plywood wall, each stroke made with such visceral force that splinters of wood jut out like angry teeth. Because nothing says fun weekend like cleaning up occult paraphernalia, right? In the early days of criminal profiling, investigators differentiated between modus operandi, the method a killer uses, and signature, the ritualistic ornamentation left at a crime scene. By 1985, behavioral analysts recognized that signature behaviors appeared in roughly 70% of serial homicide cases, giving them a psychological fingerprint to pursue. Tonight, you're deciphering Ramirez's version of that fingerprint, tracing every blood-soaked gesture back to a mind that thrived on symbolic terror. You crouch on oil-stained concrete, tracing a smear of crimson that arcs across the floor like a broken promise. The inverted cross catches your eye again. Only seconds ago, you saw it in another house, painted above a doorframe in splintered wood. Investigators still question whether Ramirez's satanic gestures reflected genuine belief or deliberate misdirection. Was he a devout occultist, or was this theater, stagecraft meant to amplify fear and confuse detective work? That open question haunts every analysis. A soft clink resonates as you step back, your boot nudging a small metal box. You pick it up with gloved hands and pry it open. Inside, a tarnished Ouija planchette, its letters worn smooth by repeated contact. Fringe whispers claimed he once left a full Ouija board behind, as if inviting unseen spirits to join his perverse carnival. No case file ever confirmed such a find, only this solitary planchette, half buried beneath oily rags and broken tools. You tuck it into an evidence bag, imagining how the myth of supernatural compulsion clung to his legend. You stand and sweep your light around the garage, a coiled extension cord draped over a rusty nail, casting a serpentine shadow on the floor. A single Bible, its cover torn, lies open on a workbench, page creased to Ezekiel 25 verse 17. Some detectives speculated Ramirez used scripture to mock the idea of redemption, but others believed he simply grabbed the nearest book during a rush of adrenaline. Theories swirl like dust motes in the shaft of your flashlight. Did he linger here, savoring each act of desecration, or was it a glance-and-go ritual, leaving victims' faith in tatters as he departed? A distant hum drifts through a cracked window, perhaps a neighbor's late-model air conditioner, or the distant drone of a helicopter searchlight slicing the sky. That interruption reminds you of something mundane. In 1982, California enacted the Evidence Code, formalizing how crime scenes were to be documented and preserved. Hours earlier, those regulations would have demanded detailed photographs of every symbol, every smear of blood. Now, in the moment, you feel caught between two worlds, one of rigid legal protocols and another of primal, chaotic violence. You hoist yourself onto a stack of wooden boards, nimble as a cat despite the weight of your gear. On the ceiling beam above, an inverted pentagram has been gouged with the tip of a screwdriver, its points uneven but unmistakable. You press your palm to the wood and feel the rough gouge against your glove. A rumor trickles through your mind. Some claimed Ramirez mixed his victims' ashes into crimson paint to adorn his sanctuaries. No lab test ever found human ashes in any pigment sample, but the image lingers, a killer performing macabre alchemy in the shadows. Your breath catches, and you pause, letting the silence settle in your bones. This breather is precious. The garage door rattles overhead, and your pulse slows as you remind yourself that nothing here can chase you down the street. The stale air is cold against your cheek, and you close your eyes for a moment, tasting relief before the next wave of intensity crashes. When you open your eyes, you spot a child's toy truck tucked into a corner, its bright primary colors smeared with black paint. You crouch and examine the wheels, one is gouged, the other caked in dried clay. In one documented case, Ramirez allegedly smashed a child's toy to powder as a twisted homage to shattered innocence, though some criminologists dismissed that as hearsay. Regardless, you can't help but feel the truck's presence here is deliberate, a calculated signpost of his warped psyche. You rise and move toward a battered workbench. On top lies a single brass candlestick, its wick burnt down to nubs. A smear of wax drips in irregular arcs, resembling the spatter of blood on white porcelain. Some fringe accounts held that Ramirez carried candles to each scene, lighting them to watch shadows twist across walls, his own private ritual before the hunt. No prosecutor ever included candle residue as concrete evidence, but the legend of a candlelit prelude gave his spree an almost cinematic dread. Your flashlight beam schemes a black and white photograph tacked to the wall, a still from a horror movie, edges burnt and curling. You recognize it as a promotional shot from a 1970s cult film about demonology, a stark contrast to the mechanical tools scattered on the bench. Did Ramirez study film to borrow his own iconography? Or was this merely another noisy artifact, left to inflame headlines? Investigators still question whether the Night Stalker was an inspired copycat or an originator of his own grotesque mythology. You step back, heart thudding, and brush a threadbare glove against the workbench, sending a small cascade of dust motes dancing in the beam. The debris glints like stars in a dark galaxy, tiny, suspended particles that might hold prints if you tested with adhesive lifters. Each speck is a potential clue, a fragment of truth buried in the narrative clouds of rumor and horror. A sudden creak pierces the hush, and you whip around, flashlight slicing the darkness. Only the rafters overhead shift in the cool night breeze. You exhale, tension unwinding as you remind yourself that you're alone, and intimately connected to the crime scenes he left behind. You sink to the floor, sifting through your notes on a battered clipboard, sketches of symbols, measurements of blood spatters, transcriptions of overheard rumors. The margin holds a question: genuine occult practice or theatrical misdirection? The answer remains elusive, a flickering shadow in the periphery of every analysis. Rising, you step toward the garage exit. But before you leave, you place your fingertips on the center of the pentagram and close your eyes, committing its imperfect geometry to memory. In that moment, you feel the weight of every symbolic echo Ramirez created, a haunting lexicon of fear he etched into homes across California. You push the door open and step back into the night air, the garage's darkness reclaiming itself behind you. The scent of oil fades, replaced by cool humidity rising off the pavement. You pause under the street lamp, gazing back at the dim opening where ritual met routine. In the distance, a church bell tolls, its steady cadence a counterpoint to the discord Ramirez left in its wake. You tuck your notes away and adjust your jacket collar, the tools of profilers and forensic labs waiting in your trunk for tomorrow's work. As you walk away, the pentagrams, inverted crosses, and whispered legends cling to your skin like static. You realize that in the end, the true echo of his symbolism isn't the paint or blood, it's the way those gestures reshaped an entire city's psyche, turning ordinary walls into canvases of terror. You climb into the passenger seat of an unmarked sedan just past midnight, the engines rumble low and insistent as you trail the Night Stalker's elusive path. It's August 1985, and word has spread that Ramirez slipped the San Gabriel Valley net by hopping freight trains bound for the Inland Empire, a tactic once popularized by Depression-era hobos seeking work and anonymity. In 1935, the FBI tracked less than 50 interstate fugitive chases nationwide. By the mid-80s, improved interstate communication had increased manhunts tenfold, yet here you are chasing a ghost across county lines. The road stretches out under a canopy of eucalyptus trees, their leaves rustling like hushed warnings overhead. You grip the seat edge as the sedan navigates creaking on ramps, following spotty CB chatter about a dark sedan seen near Pomona. Some fringe accounts claim Ramirez once disguised himself by shaving his eyebrows and dyeing his hair platinum blonde, blending into crowds at nightclub parking lots. No arrest report ever confirms such a disguise, but the rumor persists like static beneath every police scanner. Your flashlight traces swapping street signs as you roll through darkened neighborhoods: La Verne, Claremont, Azusa. Each community slept uneasily, rumors spreading that the killer slept in abandoned orange groves, emerging at dusk to hunt again. Investigators still question whether Ramirez planned his escape route in advance, a meticulously mapped network of safe houses, or simply seized chances as they appeared, relying on random forks in the asphalt to keep him free. The sedan slows at a trashed rest stop off Highway 210. You step out, crunching over broken glass and discarded soda cans. A flickering neon restroom sign sputters overhead, illuminating a graffitied wall that reads "Beware the Shadow," a half-remembered slogan scrawled by some copycat hoping to join the legend. You inhale the chill air, tasting dust and gasoline, and feel a shiver that has nothing to do with the temperature. In one stark rumor, locals reported seeing Ramirez sneaking into motels, trading stolen credit cards for room keys. Another whispered he signed in under aliases lifted from obituaries in small-town papers. No motel registry ever bore those names, yet the notion fueled a bizarre subculture of amateur detectives scouring directory microfiche for matches. You imagine him at a scratched desk, pen in hand, doodling pentagrams in the guest book margins while receptionists slept. You slip back into the car, where the driver hands you a cold bottle of water. The map on your lap bears red circles marking where victim 12 fell and blue X's where sightings fizzled into dead ends. Each symbol feels like a bruised memory. You run a thumb along the highway line. Police response times in rural stretches averaged over 20 minutes in 1985, leaving wide windows for a predator on foot. That statistic settles in your chest like wet cement, knowing how much ground he covered in the time it took deputies to roll out. A warning buzzes through the CB, all units, suspect hitchhiking near Azusa Avenue. The driver slams the brakes and peels off the highway, tires squealing over tar seals. You lean forward as headlights knife through darkness, spotting a figure in a dark t-shirt thumbing at passing cars. He looks ordinary, mid-20s, lean build, but his posture is too still, too deliberate. You and the driver exchange a glance, then ease toward him. He steps back as the sedan rolls to a stop. "Need a ride?" The driver calls through the window. The man hesitates, then nods, sliding into the back seat behind you. Your breath catches, heart hammering, you've just given him the lift he craved. You swallow as the man settles, and you catch a strong whiff of cologne mixed with sweat. Under the dim dome light, you glimpse a scar under his right eye, a detail from the composite sketch. Your hands tremble on your knees as you realize you're inches from the Night Stalker's face. He glances at you through the rearview mirror, expression unreadable. "It's late," he says in a soft voice. "I'm just trying to get home." You nod, mouth dry, remembering reports that Ramirez once claimed he committed crimes simply to pass nights on cold streets, fringe speculation that violence was a means of self-preservation rather than pure thrill. The driver eyes him warily but doesn't confront him. You swallow another gulp of water and watch the suspect's reflection. The highway's yellow lines blur past the windows, and you wonder if this ride will end in a hail of gunfire or a meek confession. Your pulse thunders, and for a moment the world narrows to this cramped cabin and the man who made it a cage. Suddenly, he shifts and leans forward. "Drop me at the next exit," he murmurs. The driver nods, grips the wheel, and eases onto a side road flanked by chain-link fences and darkened warehouses. You notice a rail spur branching off, rusting tracks disappearing into black silhouettes of industrial cranes. The suspect's gaze flicks there, and he exhales, ghosting his breath along the window. He slips out before the car fully stops, vanishing into a tangle of concrete and shadows. You sit frozen as the sedan idles, watching empty air. The driver exhales, shakes his head, and punches the accelerator. You slump back, ribs aching from adrenaline. The stretch of road behind you feels sacred now, a corridor where the legend both lived and died. Only Ramirez remains free, his silhouette still unclaimed. You lean your head against the seat, eyes closed. The chills have nothing to do with air conditioning. You breathe deeply, letting the car's hum lull you into a tense calm. You think of the map's red circles awaiting his next move. Somewhere in the night, another town braces itself for terror. You slip your fingers into the evidence bag at your side, photographs of broken latches, scrawled symbols, shoe print casts, each a fragment of a puzzle that grows more urgent by the mile. A short breather follows, just long enough to swallow the ache in your lungs before you're thrust back onto the highway chase. The moon hangs low, unveiling signposts pointing toward Pomona, Claremont, and beyond. You press your palm to the window, feeling the cold glass against your skin. The open road yawns wide, and you realize the fugitive's trail is as long as the state itself. You exhale through clenched teeth and whisper to yourself, tomorrow, they'll find more clues at the next scene. Tonight, you drove alongside evil and lived to tell the tale. The road stretches on under California's starry sky, and you steel yourself for the miles left to travel. You step out into a hush that feels more charged than any siren. Streets once silent now thrum with the low murmur of armed neighbors on patrol. It's early July 1985, and across Southern California, ordinary people have transformed into self-appointed guardians of their blocks. By 1982, the National Sheriff's Association had formally endorsed neighborhood watch programs, spurring community efforts nationwide to keep an eye on each other's front porches. Now you're part of that legacy, flashlight in one hand and a hastily purchased baseball bat in the other, as you join a caravan of sedans and station wagons outfitted with CB radios and improvised sirens. You drive slowly down your own street, windows rolled down so you can hear the low buzz of walkie-talkies and the soft click of holster snaps. The air carries the scent of charred barbecue, families who tried to eat dinner on their lawns before dusk descended into paranoia. A man in a Hawaiian shirt nods at you from beneath a wide-brimmed hat, his AR-style rifle rests against the passenger seat, a far cry from the garden trowels most residents used to plant begonias just weeks ago. Investigators still question whether these civilian militias deterred the Night Stalker or instead sowed panic that masked valuable clues. Ahead, you see a pair of teenagers perched on lawn chairs, their knees jittering as they scan the shadows. They tap together a cheap pair of binoculars at twilight, whispering about rumored break-ins on Maple Avenue that never happened. Rumor has it that some vigilant watchers even donned ski masks to imitate Ramirez's silhouette, hoping to scare away any real intruder, only to terrify their own neighbors. You swallow hard at the thought of mistaken identity. You follow the glow of battery-powered lanterns toward a cluster of cars idling in someone's driveway. Families have pooled their resources. A retired Marine mans a handheld spotlight, a nurse rigs a folding table as an impromptu command center, and a middle school teacher distributes photocopies of Ramirez's composite sketch. It feels strange to see your childhood science fair poster board repurposed to track a killer's movements, but necessity trumps decorum these days. A hush falls over the group as the command table receives a new tip. Someone saw a dark figure near the alley behind Cypress Street at midnight. You tighten your grip on the bat, chest tightening in unison. You press your ear to a crackling radio, all units, west end of Elm, 0 movement. You glance at the teacher's chalk scrawl, check drains, low lights. Your pulse rattles in your ears, louder than the distant hum of freeway traffic. Then, as if on cue, crickets begin their evening chorus, and the world seems to exhale. You close your eyes for a moment, letting the chorus of insects dilute the tension. When you open them, a neighbor steps forward, a school crossing guard turned volunteer dispatcher. She hands you a small flashlight with Block 6 scrawled in marker and nods. You head down the sidewalk, whether by choice or obligation you're not sure. The trees overhead form a dark tunnel, and every rustle in the hedges could be the snap of ski masks. You steady your breathing, remembering that thousands of Americans joined watch programs each year seeking proactive safety, not paranoia. A rapid tapping on a fence panel jolts you upright, your shadow flits across the wood like a startled bird. You swing the bat instinctively, nothing falls but an empty soda can. You laugh low in relief, though your heart still pounds. It's healthy to shake off false alarms now and then, adrenaline needs a release. You press on, passing homes with plywood-reinforced windows and doors sealed with duct tape. In one yard, you spot an elaborate tripwire jury rigged from fishing line and signal bells, a contraption supposed to rattle if someone crawls in. Fringe engineers back then claimed similar devices had once detained small animals, but human intruders like Ramirez were said to shatter them without detection. You shrug off the gadget's futility and keep moving, trusting your own senses more than any rattling wire. The houses here cluster around a cul-de-sac, and you slow to a crawl. A neighbor shines a spotlight toward a collapsed hedge. He thought he saw movement, but it's only a raccoon rummaging through garden mulch. You breathe out and pat him on the shoulder. Neighborhood watches rely on each person's split-second decisions, and tonight you're reminded that mistakes are part of communal vigilance. Further down, you approach a narrow levee where a group of retirees stand guard. One elderly gentleman clutches a shotgun loaned by his cousin in the sheriff's office, another balances a baseball cap that reads "I protect my block." They peer out across the street, where sprinklers gleam in the porch light like watery prisms. "You never know," he mutters. "He could be under the dripping rose bush." You crouch beside him, shining your flashlight across the lawn. Everything looks ordinary until the beam hits a low-hanging laundry line, its clothespin swaying. In the flicker, you think you see a face, but realize it's only a stray sock. You straighten up, muscles unclenching. A short pause in the night air feels like an entire universe of calm. You venture onward, returning to the command table to share updates. Someone markers a false alarm as Cypress number 4, raccoon, and you see a growing tally of nothing found scrawled beside chalk circles marking searched zones. Yet beneath that laughter and self-deprecating humor lies an unspoken fear. Tomorrow could bring a tally of found signs of forced entry, and the game would shift again. A local hardware store owner appears, handing out boxes of spare batteries and glow sticks. He reminds everyone that in the 1970s, burglar alarms were installed in less than 10% of suburban homes. By 1985 that figure had climbed to almost 40%, but many families here couldn't afford them. You accept a glow stick and crack it, the liquid inside flaring to neon green. The glow seems absurd against the dark, but maybe absurdity is the only antidote to dread. As the night deepens, you notice the cadence of watch rotations, 10 minutes on, 10 minutes off, keeping exhaustion at bay. The teacher from before offers you a cup of hot coffee from a thermos. You drink, feeling the warmth chase the cold tremor from your spine. Brief respite is vital when fear feels like a living thing. Investigators still question whether these grassroots watches interrupted Ramirez's timing or simply forced him into different patterns, but tonight you act on faith, believing that presence itself can deter evil. You shoulder your bat and step back into the street, nodding as another shift arrives to relieve you. Your final checkpoint is a weathered mailbox perched at the end of a shadowed driveway. You tap twice on it, a silent signal that this block has been swept. In response, your relief team replicates your taps, echoing a code that binds all of you together in this communal endeavor. You turn to leave but pause under the glow of a nearby street lamp. You look back at the chain of figures arm in arm, flashlights raised like silent torches. In that moment, you realize that their true weapon isn't metal or wood, it's solidarity, the shared refusal to surrender ordinary life to the Night Stalker's shadow. You exhale, letting the tension slip from your shoulders as you walk away, each step lighter than the last. Ahead, the suburban sprawl lies cloaked in darkness, but you know a network of watchful eyes will shine across every yard. Fear may have mobilized them, but hope, flickering like glow sticks in the night, will keep them watching until dawn. You step out onto a sunlit sidewalk in East Los Angeles just after dawn, the heat already curling off the pavement. A few blocks back, you felt the city's heartbeat quicken under the Night Stalker's shadow. Now you're part of the pulse that finally stopped his reign. Citizen outrage and collective vigilance have coalesced into a human net, ready to snap. Under California Penal Code Section 837, private citizens are empowered to arrest someone committing a public offense in their presence, a fact you tuck into the back of your mind as you approach the small group gathered outside a rented sedan. Earlier that morning, Ramirez tried to pry open a car door on Huntington Drive, hoping for a quick ride away from downtown chaos. You arrive mere minutes after neighbors shouted alarms, their voices ricocheting off stucco walls. The front passenger window of the sedan is cracked, and someone has propped a fallen tire iron against the frame, an impromptu barricade. You step forward, adrenaline flaring, ready to seal off every escape route. Investigators still question whether the shotgun wielded by a local barber crossed the line between defense and vigilante justice, but here and now, no one hesitates. You join the cluster of onlookers as one daring neighbor edges closer, coaxing Ramirez out with a firm, "Show your hands." The suspect's long frame appears in the driver's door, ski mask in hand, eyes darting like prey spotting a pack of wolves. He freezes, gaze flicking from face to face, and for a moment you think he might bolt. Instead, he stands there, chest heaving, the morning sun glinting off his pistol tucked into his waistband. A sharp crack splits the air as the barber slaps his knee, hurling a makeshift warning shot into the pavement. You flinch but hold your ground, no one else moves either. The ricocheted bullet sparks dust at Ramirez's feet, and you sense his resolve crumbling. Fringe rumors later claimed he whispered Ave Satanas under his breath as he dropped to his knees, but no one reports hearing that. Yet the story clung to his legend, as tenacious as the pentagrams he painted on walls. You close the distance, every step precise, heart thrumming in your ears like a drum roll. Beside you, a schoolteacher who'd lost her neighbor's daughter to Ramirez's spree levels a trembling finger at him. "Don't you move," she hisses. The teacher's courage steals your own. You reach for the suspect's outstretched wrist just as he lunges to pull himself up. Your fingers clamp around the fabric of his jacket, yanking him forward. The world contracts to a narrow tunnel of sound, the scrape of sneakers on asphalt, the slap of a neighbor's leather-gloved hand across Ramirez's back, the low buzz of distant traffic. You thrust him against the sedan's hood, chest to cold metal, and press down. The weight of your combined bodies makes him sag, eyes rolling back in shock. A small crowd gathers in the street, flashlights raised despite the brightness, as if every beam might illuminate a second fuse on further violence. You glance over your shoulder at the tight circle of neighbors, office clerks, retirees, a young couple clutching a baby. None of them had formal training in takedown tactics, but today their civilian solidarity becomes its own form of expertise. A retired cop among you crouches beside Ramirez, snapping on handcuffs that click like an exclamation point. You exhale at the sound, realizing it's the first time anyone's spoken confidently about a finality to this nightmare. As the retired officer radios dispatch, Ramirez lowers his head. For a fleeting instant, you see a flicker of defiance in his pupils before it dims into resignation. The pistol he brandished lies forgotten on the pavement, its black barrel glinting in the light, as if marking the end of his nighttime delusions. You smell the faintest trace of motor oil from the smashed sedan mirror nearby, mingling with the scent of dust and fear evaporating into relief. You step back, letting the officer guide Ramirez toward a squad car. Onlookers maintain a perimeter, voices hushed as if not to disturb the significance of the moment. A news photographer materializes on the curb, snapping images of the captive, but you scarcely notice the camera's staccato. Instead, you lock eyes with the suspect one last time, noting the rash of scars across his knuckles, silent testaments to violence he never fully mastered. Under the legal doctrine of citizen's arrest, you each bear witness that this man was caught in the act. The retired cop reads Ramirez his rights, and you realize that California's system of community empowerment, once a theoretical footnote in policing manuals, has just been writ large across these streets. Mainstream historians cite the 1886 case of Theodore Durant, whose capture by vigilant locals set precedents for public involvement in serial homicide investigations. Today, you follow in that legacy. A murmur ripples through the crowd as someone recalls a fringe rumor, that Ramirez once removed his boots before an attack to muffle his footsteps, but left the footwear behind as a taunt. No prosecution exhibit ever bore witness to missing boots, yet the tale joins the tapestry of mythscape around his spree. For a moment, you consider how quickly fear spawns folklore, that a chewed fingernail or a stray playing card could become gospel in the public imagination. You turn away, blinking against the glare of dawn, and feel the collective exhale of a neighborhood unshackling itself from terror. The air tastes clean, as if scrubbed by the act of capture. Policemen shuffle into formation, corralling witnesses for statements. You hand over your confiscated evidence, a blood-spattered ski mask, now flattened in your palm, its fabric stiff with dried residue. You feel the weight of its history, knowing that labs will test every stitch for fingerprints and DNA. In the aftermath, you sense something subtle shift in the city's rhythm, a promise that locked doors and shuttered windows can once again open without dread. Yet a quiet question lingers in your mind. Investigators still question whether Ramirez acted entirely alone or had accomplices quietly enabling his flight, an echo of uncertainty that outlasts the moment of triumph. You step aside as the patrol cars peel away, light strobing patterns across stucco walls. The crowd thins, leaving you with a single, empty tire iron and the flattened mask in your hand. You tuck them into a paper evidence bag, sealing away relics of fear now consigned to history. Walking home, you pass family homes that had bristled with homemade defenses just hours before. Now their curtains hang loose, welcome. You feel the sun's warmth seep into your bones, a stark contrast to the chill you carried each night since April 1984. As you cross the street, you look up at the sky, its pale blue expanse a vow that no shadow can hold dominion forever. In that moment, the chapter closes, the Night Stalker is no more. Yet you carry the lesson that terror thrives in darkness until brave souls bring light, even if that light is nothing more than a neighbor's flashlight and a steadfast resolve to protect what matters. You step into the hushed wood-paneled courtroom, the air heavy with polished oak and the low murmur of souls waiting for closure. Under the glare of overhead fluorescence, Ramirez sits at the defense table, dark hair slicked back, steel blue eyes hidden behind tinted glasses, as if refusing to meet your gaze. You feel the gravity of this moment settle in your chest. This is where his shadow meets the scales of justice. You recall that in 1976, the U.S. Supreme Court's decision in Gregg v. Georgia reinstated capital punishment, reshaping criminal justice across the nation and paving the way for California's Proposition 7 in 1978, which broadened death penalty statutes for serial killers like Ramirez. That landmark change transforms today's proceedings from theoretical to irreversible. Jury selection unfolds with tense precision. You watch 12 faces, 6 men, 6 women, each questioned about prejudices bred by sensational headlines. Investigators still question whether nightly TV specials and tabloid spreads compromised the jury's impartiality, given that local stations devoted entire segments to Ramirez's crimes. Witnesses take the stand. A surviving victim's voice trembles as she recounts threats whispered in pitch-dark hallways, her testimony precise enough to etch into your mind.
The prosecution presents forensic reconstructions, slide after slide of floor plans, blood spatter models, and fingerprint overlays. You note how bite mark analysis, a technique still debated among pathologists' peers here as mainstream evidence, reflecting 80s crime lab practices. During a brief recess, you drift into a back corridor where deputies confiscate court sketches destined for tabloids. A fringe rumor claims Ramirez once carved pentagrams into his cell's wooden armrests between testimony days. A macabre act, no official record confirmed, yet whispered among jailhouse journalists. You press your palm to the cool wall and imagine those ghostly gouges lingering in the stale air. Back in the gallery, defense counsel rises, probing inconsistencies in witness recollections. You feel the soft rustle of paper as cross-examinations slice through prosecutorial certainty. The defense challenges the lack of DNA testing. The technology was applied mostly to rape kits then, leaving murder cases reliant on fingerprints and ballistics. Investigators still question whether the absence of genetic evidence in 1989 risked conflating Ramirez's prints with those of other suspects processed in an overburdened lab. A hush descends when the judge admits dozens of photographs, walls scarred by blood-drawn symbols, victims' personal items arranged like altars, and Ramirez's own reflection caught in a broken mirror. You wince as each image flickers on the projector, remnants of terror magnified for the jury. Closing arguments swirl around you. The DA's gravelly voice invokes the sanctity of home and innocence lost. Defense counsel warns against letting fear eclipse due process. You sense the jurors' silent debate playing across narrowed eyes. When the verdict is read, guilty on all counts, you hear the room intake one collective breath. Ramirez's shoulders slump, eyes flicking toward the jury box where tears glisten in some members' eyes. Outside the courtroom, protesters and supporters clash, banners raised for closure or clemency. Fringe activists assert Ramirez penned letters of repentance on death row, fueling conspiracy theories about hidden accomplices smuggling ink and paper into San Quentin. Sentencing follows weeks later. You return to the same chamber, now set for penalty phase. Expert psychiatric reports argue over his sanity. Ultimately, the judge sentences him to death. You feel the courthouse floor vibrate with that pronouncement, a verdict woven from law and collective agony. In the years that follow, Ramirez's appeals stretch into decades. He dies of complications on June 7, 2013, still on California's death row, never knowing release. You reflect on how slowly justice moved, and odyssey fitting for a man whose shadow spanned counties. You rise and step into sunlight streaming through high windows. Hearing the final thud of heavy oak doors closing behind you, the echoes of gavel strikes and jury verdicts dissolve into the bustle of the city beyond. Yet you carry the trial's lesson that bringing darkness into the light demands more than evidence. It requires unwavering resolve and the courage to confront fear itself. You wander through the quiet streets of a once terrorized neighborhood as dawn's pale light bleeds into the sky. Each worn sidewalk and locked door, a testament to nights you survived. Over the decades, Los Angeles transformed. By 2015, its homicide rate had fallen by over 60% from the mid-1980s peak, reflecting advances in community policing and forensic science that once faltered under the Night Stalker spree. Yet here, in this block of modest bungalows, the air still hums with residual fear, as though Ricardo Ramirez's shadow never quite left. You pause outside a pale blue house, its windows now adorned with gilt curtains instead of plywood, and run your hand along the gate-cool iron polished smooth by generations of hands. Asterisk, asterisk inside. Families rebuilt lives once shattered by that final arrest on Huntington Drive. but you can almost smell jasmine on the breeze. Recalling how Ramirez scrawled inverted crosses in blood across flower beds, turning innocence into altar, some fringe believers claimed his presence lingers here still. That passing headlights sometimes catch a ski-masked silhouette drifting past trees, though no camera ever captured such apparitions. Investigators still question whether his final capture truly ended the threat or merely sent copycats scattering into darker corners, inspired by his mythic reputation. You feel the tension in that uncertainty as you step toward the old command post, a community center now repurposed as a library, its doors open wide. In 1992, California mandated victim impact statements in sentencing hearings, an effort to center survivors' voices. You imagine those statements echoing through these halls, carrying the raw ache of loss into the sterile corridors of justice. A short breather follows quiet, so profound it presses against your eardrums. You continue down an alley where once you found scattered shoe prints and the faint residue of lamp oil thought to mask luminol's glow. Today, a mural brightens the brick wall, a phoenix rising, painted by local teens in honor of lives reclaimed from terror. Beneath it, you spot a small placard in memory of hope. You kneel to read the inscription. It names each of Ramirez's known victims alongside community volunteers who led the night watch patrols. That pairing of loss and resilience feels like a living truth etched in stone. You rise and turn onto Maple Avenue, where a single street lamp still stands as a silent sentinel. It towers above a plaque noting funds raised in 1986 to install stronger locks on every residence within 3 blocks. That grassroots effort, one of California's first public safety partnerships, became a model for victim assistance programs nationwide. You trace the plaque's weathered letters, acknowledging how ordinary citizens reclaimed power from fear. Dozens of years have layered this neighborhood with new stories. Children's laughter spilling from front lawns, gardeners tending rosebush where once dried blood-stained petals, yet you sense a thin thread connecting past terror and present normalcy, a reminder that safety is a fragile promise, upheld only by vigilance and unity. You can almost hear the faint echo of early forensic breakthroughs, DNA profiles, flickering to life in distant labs, drawing a line from those advances to this moment of calm. Another gentle pause softens the narrative, a moment to exhale. Pass a modern community police substation, its glass facade reflecting sunrise. Inside, officers display artifacts from the case. The battered ski mask, the tarnished Ouija planchette, framed alongside a grainy photograph of Ramirez's arrest. A plaque notes that in 1990, California began collecting DNA on arrest, a policy that would prevent countless future predators. You peer through the glass, recognizing how law and science converged to block the path Ramirez once haunted. Stepping away, you cross a street where the asphalt still bears faint cracks, fractures you once marked with chalk as sites of blood. Spatter, now sealed by repair crews. Each fresh layer of pavement is a small victory over memory's hold. You press your palm to the cool street, imagining the microscopic prints once embedded their prints that labs ultimately matched to Ramirez. But only after those prints sat in dusty file drawers for weeks. Investigators still question whether earlier adoption of automated fingerprint systems might have shortened his reign of terror. You continue to a small park where a single statue stands, a bear cub carved from sandstone, perched atop a pedestal engraved with watchful guardian. Children climb its back by day. At dusk, locals weave string lights around its ears. Asterisk, it commemorates the neighborhood's volunteer night watch teachers, bus drivers, retirees, and teens whose collective resolve finally corralled a killer. You trace the cub's rounded muzzle, softening beneath your fingers, and recall the tender irony that a predator so fierce was undone by ordinary compassion. As you walk on, the breeze flutters scraps of paper still taped to lampposts, flyers offering free self-defense classes and CPR training. The designs are modern, but their message echoes 1985's panic-driven leaflets. You remember typing those flyers on a clattering typewriter, the ink smudged by hurried hands. Now, QR codes replace blood-splattered scrolls, connecting smartphones. 2. Online safety courses are high-tech evolution born from the same well of necessity. You climb a gentle hill and stop at its crest. Surveying the grid of rooftops stretching beneath a dawning sky, the city pulses quietly beyond. The hum of morning traffic, a lullaby of regained normalcy. But you remain vigilant, heart-tuned to the subtle tension that once made every doorknob tremble under your fingertips. You recall that in 2013, Ramirez died behind bars of natural causes, his final breath an anticlimactic end to a saga that defined an era. You breathe deeply, letting the panorama absorb into your bones. What lingers is neither gore nor spectacle, but the echo of collective courage, how simple acts of watchfulness, code taps, and chance sightings wove a net tight enough to stop a monster. The night may have claimed moments of innocence, but this morning reclaims them in laughter, light, and the promise of dawn. You pause at the slope of the hill, shoulders settling as the warmth of sunrise unfurls across your skin. A gentle stillness surrounds you, soft and unbroken, as if the world itself has sighed in relief. The distant clinking of breakfast dishes drifts up from open windows, mingling with birdsong that threads through the air like a familiar lullaby. In this hush, the ache of memory loosens its hold. You feel how far you've come from trembling behind locked doors to standing here bathed in golden light. The scars of the past persist, but they wear a gentler shape now, woven into the fabric of community and resilience. You carry them not as burdens, but as threads of a broader tapestry, woven with courage, solidarity, and quiet perseverance. Let your breath settle into an even rhythm. Feel each inhale bring warmth, and each exhale release tension. You've witnessed darkness, but survived to see the dawn. The city rises around you, its heartbeat steady, proof that no shadow endures against the light of collective hope. Now, allow the gentle breeze to carry away lingering echoes of fear. You are safe here. You are among allies who guard each other through the night. The past informs your vigilance, but no longer governs your calm. Let your eyelids soften. In this moment, peace is yours to claim, soft as dawn's first rays, enduring as the quiet strength in every neighbor's watchful eye. Sweet dreams.